Good morning, I'm Scott Vermeris with Park City Sailing and welcome to the beautiful Jordanelle. I'm standing here aboard one of our J22s. This one lives in the marina throughout the season. I'm going to show you a thing or two about operating this boat. If you're watching this video, it's because you're interested in joining our access program or you are already a member, and we want to make sure that everyone understands the best protocol and the best practices for using these boats. It's all about safety, it's all about fun, and it's all about maintenance so that we can keep these boats looking nice and working well for as long as possible. The purpose of this video today is going to be to give you some tips about using the boat and try to be helpful so that people can feel a little bit more confident when they're using these boats, getting in and out of the dock, rigging, de-rigging, and we want to show you what ship shape should look like and give you some tips for if you run into any problems out here while you're using the boat. So one of the things that we'd like everyone to understand and be aware of and think about when they're using these boats is that our program relies on shared accountability. So the way you find the boat when you get here, we'd like you to leave it that way or better. Please, if the boat's dirty, wash it. Please coil lines, take some pride in what you're doing, and respect all the rest of our members and all the people that help try to keep these boats nice. There are a list of several things that you want to make sure you have set in place, that you've checked off your list before you go out. So I'm just going to toss my sail cover below and I'm going to take a look and see, is there any water in the bilge? You can see beneath the floorboard if there's any water down there. Right now she's looking pretty dry. If you were to find water underneath the floorboard, you'd want to get the pump out and pump water into the bucket or into the cockpit, which self-bails. I'm just going to stick this gate on the side and stow my sail cover on the bench. Hang my lock right here. There's a hook. Here we have a jerry can full of gas in case the outboard motor might need some more. If you ever find this low, shoot me a text or an email so that we can get one of our staffers to fill it back up for you. It's also important to make sure that these are sealed tight, so in case you're sailing and it tips over, we don't have gas leak in the boat. All right, let's cover all of the gear that you should find on your vessel. A throwable cushion, which you can use for sitting on, but it's also to throw to someone if they go overboard. PFDs, one per passenger. Down below I also have a paddle in case the motor doesn't work and you are stuck with no wind. A bucket and a sponge, not only for cleaning the boat but also for bailing water out. Goes along with this handy hand pump, bilge pump, so you can pump water out of the bottom of the boat into the bucket and then pour overboard or out the cockpit. Extra dock lines. Let's say you're out sailing and you need to make a pit stop and you don't want to come all the way back into the slip. You're welcome to find one of the appropriate public docks. It's important to know that when you do that, you want to practice your best knots, specifically tying off to a horn cleat to tie the boat up properly, and never forget to use a fender when you're doing that. Fire extinguisher. Winch handles are aboard in case you want to use them for the winches if it's pretty heavy wind. And there's one thing I'm missing. Pop quiz, do you know what it is? I'll tell you, it is an air horn. And this is a great example of what might happen to you. Let's say you notice something's missing on the boat. Text me or send me an email and I'll go get that air horn and make sure it is on board the boat as it should be. So I'm going to get ready to rig the boat, but what I'd like to do is get the engine running and let it run and idle to warm up while I rig the boat. As mentioned before, we have two J22s, and that means two different outboard motors. It's important to know that both of them are 4-stroke, so we're not mixing oil into our gas at any point, which makes things a lot simpler for you. You're just going to pour gas right into the engine if you need to. I'm going to show you how to get this thing into its lowest position where it needs to be for operation, and the steps for getting it started, and also for putting it away when you're done. So, first of all, in order to lower the motor, you're going to have to disengage the little spring that holds this motor mount up. So I'm going to hold this aft and push the motor down, holding this aft until it gets into its lowest position and it will click into place. What's important is that the prop is fully underwater. We can burn out a motor if we're not getting water to cool the engine. So making sure that the prop and the motor is in its lowest position is critical. Okay, so getting started. I want to first always open up my vent. You're always going to find that vent, or almost always, on top of the gas cap. So I go lefty-loosey and open that up so air can get in. On the starboard side of the engine, you're going to have a fuel on-off switch You can see it's off. That's how it should be when the motor is not being used. That helps it function better long term. And then when we want to use it, we're going to turn that on. So now the fuel is on. So I'll turn the motor back around. I'm going to demonstrate here that the kill cord, this little kill key, which if you pull it off will kill the engine. That's important for emergencies and also just for shutting it down. But we want to make sure that this little black key is right on that red nipple. Otherwise the engine won't start. I've got my tiller and throttle. On this one, the turtle is slow and the rabbit is fast, and you see a start position. I'm going to crank up a little bit so it's in a start position. And then I'm going to go ahead and pull. You may or may not need to use some choke. I like to give it a couple tugs just to see how she sounds. Okay, we're not getting much, so I'm going to go ahead and pull the choke out like so. You can hear it's starting to go a little bit. Give another tug, and I'm going to push that choke in. And in a perfect world, to keep running. Sometimes you need to get the motor to warm up a little bit. So I'll give it another pull, and I may come over and give it a little throttle. That always helps to give it some gas. Just help get it going. Kind of like getting out of bed in the morning. You just got to get warmed up and get things moving. This Honda, the gray motor that you're going to find on one of our J22s, does not have a neutral forward reverse lever. The transmission happens all through the throttle. To make the boat go forward, you're just going to throttle up and the boat will go forward. We don't have reverse, so reverse looks like this. Spinning the motor head all the way around, and the tiller can then still tip towards you. And remember that throttle is going to be the opposite direction now, and you're going to be able to throttle to make the boat go in reverse. One thing that can be very frustrating is if you're trying to reverse out of this slip and this little bracket is not holding the motor in position, it will want to pop up when it's in reverse. Right here is what holds the motor from popping up like that. So what I'm going to do is put it down and really push that into place firmly. Now you'll notice that that motor is not going to pop up. It's important to know that when you're operating these J22s, if you don't have enough weight in the back of the boat, the prop may or may not be beneath the water. So when you're backing out or when you're motoring, you want to get at least 1 or 2 crew members to the back of the boat and not have people up on the bow. Otherwise, you're going to hear it running loud as it's out of the water. We want to keep that prop underneath the water so that you're getting purchase, but you're also getting water intake. When you're done using the engine at the end of the day, shut it off. Close the vent, turn off the fuel on the side, and always remember to raise the motor back up to its highest position so it's not in the water collecting algae. So what I'll do is I'll push down on the motor head so that I can release the spring, and I'll hold the lever aft while I'm raising the motor up, and that's that. Okay, quick review of the other motor as mentioned before, the Black Mercury. A couple differences with this one. You have forward and neutral. So obviously neutral is neutral and forward is forward, and then to go in reverse, we're going to pivot the motor all the way around 180 degrees as it is right now, going forward and back out. Everything else is pretty similar. You've got your kill cord for killing the engine, your choke, your vent on top, and your gas on and off switch is on the starboard side of the engine, found in red. And that is on, and that is off, as indicated on those little symbols right there. So yeah, just know which motor that you're using. Know that this black one has to be in the water to operate. And you're gonna be watching for water coming out the side of the stem here to make sure that indicates that you're getting water intake, which cools the motor. If you're not seeing it spitting water, you need to shut it off and troubleshoot from there. So we're gonna get ready to go sailing. We're gonna rig the boat. My first step in doing this process is I'm gonna actually get my main sheet off the boom. I'm gonna uncoil the main sheet, and I wanna stack it neatly in the floor of the cockpit. So I'm gonna take that line and lay it down, open it up a little bit. I'm gonna uncleat the main sheet and put a little slack in there, okay? So now when we go to hoist, we'll be ready to go. Uncleat the halyard and gently lower the boom down in the cockpit so that it's resting on the traveler. Now that that's done, I can take the shackle off the aft end of the boom and then I can take my halyard, never let it go. If we lose this, that could ruin our day. I'm going to transfer the halyard to the head of the sail and just fasten the shackle like so, and we're ready to hoist. Typically, I'll leave the sail ties on until I'm ready to hoist, and when we get to that point, I'll take those sail ties off. And my favorite place to stow them is right on one of the handrails near the companionway. I'll use a little girth hitch, and then they're there when I need them, when I'm coming back in and I want to douse the sail and flake it and get it tied down. For the sake of our video today, we're going to demonstrate some things while in the slip here at the dock. I want it to be known that you should never be raising sails here at the dock. This is something to be done while swinging with the wind off the end of a dock to leeward, or at a mooring ball, or once you're motoring and you're away from the marina. So I've got my halyard shackled. The halyard runs up through the mast and comes out the bottom sheave, through the cleat, along the deck. My crew member is going to find the halyard, and in order to hoist the sail, we need to work together at a nice medium pace. If he goes too fast, what's going to happen with our boats is you find these slugs catching and getting a little stuck in the track going up the mast. So we're going to work together, and I, as another crew member, I'm going to be able to help them along by pushing these slugs and pre-feeding them up the mast to make sure that we get a nice smooth hoist. As you can see, if we go a little fast, we get stuck. So I'm going to kind of help. I just ran into a little problem. This is a good teaching moment. My Cunningham is too tight, and you can see I can't quite get the sail all the way up. And I've got some extra material here, so I'm going to release the Cunningham here. Now we can stretch out the luff of the sail and get it fully hoisted into position. It's important to make sure that the main halyard is cleated and secure. You can always back it up. On this boat, we actually don't have horn cleats on the deck, which is why we have a very reliable cam cleat here on the deck. On our other J, you're gonna find that you're gonna wanna come through the cam cleat and back it up with the horn cleat on the deck near the winch on the port side. Okay, now that my sail's up, we want to pay attention to our control lines. I've got a little extra material here in the foot of the sail. We're going to find our outhaul, and we're going to pull on that and watch how the sail stretches out. We're stretching the foot out. The outhaul runs in the boom and is shackled to the clew. Right now, until I'm out and underway, I'm going to leave my boom vang loose. This is going to give me a little bit of freedom, and it's going to help the boat also not sail prematurely, and it's going to make things a lot easier. So we're getting ready to go sailing. We have to pay attention to which way the wind is coming from. Today we have a nice gentle breeze out of the south, which is typical for us. We call that our prevailing wind because that's what happens most often here at the Jordanelle. Now, we also get wind out of the north, and that presents challenges here at this dock slip. Today, we don't have that. Today, I'm going to take my leeward lines off, meaning these are the lines furthest from the wind, meaning when the wind then acts on the boat, we still have these dock lines preventing the boat from hitting the dock. So I'm going to take these leeward lines, I'm going to toss that on the dock, and these stay on the dock at all times. The reason we have zip ties is so that we don't have people adjusting these or forgetting and taking them off the cleats. These always will live like this. I'm going to take off my windward stern line. Note that the engine is off right now so that you can hear me. Usually you would have your motor running. I'm going to go forward, take off the bow line. This is your last line of defense, is your bow line on the windward side. And I'm going to toss that onto the dock. My crew member now is either, if they can reach the forestay, they'll have a hold there. If I'm already this far back, they're going to come and they're going to help guide the boat out by putting a hand here on the shrouds. And I'm going to assume my skipper's position and steer the boat out using the engine and the tiller for steering. So once again, let's imagine ourselves out sailing and we're ready to head back to the dock, and we first need to douse our sails. Step one, very, very important on our boats before letting the sail down. That is to release the outhaul, okay? That's gonna give me some slack in the foot so that as the sail comes down, there's not too much tension through the foot, which sometimes causes these slugs to pop out of the track. Next, I'm ready to let the sail down, so I'm going to grab hold of the halyard and uncleat the halyard. And as I let the sail down, I'm gonna help by pushing the slugs down a little bit, and I'm going to encourage the sail to flake itself side to side over the boom. So I'll take some of this material over to the port side of the boat first, and then I'll encourage the next flake to go to starboard, and you alternate back and forth, creating a nice pattern. This is gonna make flaking much easier. Now that the sail's down, I'm gonna move aft in the boat back to the cockpit. And at this point, I like to straddle the end of the boom and tug back on the sail. It's important to avoid creasing and wrinkling because that's what breaks down the sail material, causing them to not last as long. Now, I have my sail ties right where I need them. I'll find the short one, and I'm gonna get around the sail. I'll get my longer sail tie and get around the girthier part of the sail, maybe even go around twice. That looks pretty good. Okay, so now I'm going to take the shackle off the head of the sail, and I'm gonna walk back and secure it to this little eye here on the end of the boom. I can then hoist and get that boom up. Ship shape for us is having the boom parallel to the water. My boom is swinging around, so I'm gonna take the slack out and put some tension on my main sheet, like so. What I do like to come back and pop out any extra wrinkles, make sure it looks really good, and then that's ready to have a sail cover go on. As I get close to the dock, I'm gonna make sure that my crew member is close enough to step off. And they're gonna walk forward to catch the bow so that it does not strike the metal winch. Engine off. Now, first things first, we're gonna work together. While my crew is holding, I'm gonna get the line. It's critical that the dock line runs through the chock, always. I'm still gonna have my crew hold the forestay while I retrieve the other bow line. The bow lines are the most important lines because they prevent forward thrust and prevent the bow from striking the winch. So now I can run the dock line through the chock and over the cleat. Now, these little lines here, these are meant to keep the eyes of the dock lines on the cleats. So I'm just gonna do a basic cleat, and that prevents these from coming off. I'll need a little help, so my crew member can help me retrieve my stern line. And I can pull myself gently closer to the dock and make the connection simply by putting the eye over the cleat and then putting these little keeper lines, securing them by doing a basic proper cleat like so. And I've got one more to go. I may or may not just be able to step off and get this one myself, depending on how acrobatic you want to be. Okay. So the reason I'm standing out here on the end of this dock is to point out these black rubber drapes, which actually protect the dock and are supposed to protect boats, but our boats, they actually harm in the sense that they leave big black marks on the hull. And we've put a lot of work into getting the boats buffed out and waxed and nice and white. So when you maneuver around this corner, or if you happen to use this end of the dock to tie off to when you hoist your sails, or maybe you're just doing a crew change or something, please avoid these rubber drapes if you can. They will leave marks. If you have to be here, use a fender, but if you can, just avoid this area altogether. Thank you. In addition to the black rubber drapes that I mentioned that leave marks on the boat, I want to remind you of some hazards that we must be aware of here in the marina at our dock slip specifically. And they are the big metal winch, which is why you may or may not find a tire on here intended to protect the boat in case it does get too close to that winch. We also have this metal electrical box. It's just very important to keep the boat away from these objects. So one of the skills that we want to understand is coiling lines. What you want to do is let the line bend naturally so that it doesn't get little knots in it and kinks later on when you uncoil the line and you're wanting it to run through blocks and things like that. So I'm drawing out an arm's length and I'm laying the line into my other less dominant hand, and you can see it's got a nice figure 8 pattern. That's the natural behavior of the line, and I'm not going to interrupt that. I'm going to leave myself a little tail on the end, and the reason I do that is I want to take some of that and wrap it around. You can even maybe get a little with your pinky. Whatever is best for you, you just want to find a way to wrap your coil up a few times. And I still have a little bit of extra. I'm going to put a bite on the line, that's a loop, and that'll go through the eye of my coil, and I'm going to go over the top with that. What I like to do is then hang my coil from the bail. That's this little horseshoe shape device here that's hanging on the bottom of the boom that connects the main sheet to the boom. I'm going to take the figure 8 knot in the bitter end of my line and go through the bail. And sometimes I can just stick it in here and create a little bit of a hitch, an overhand knot, and hang my line like so. And then when the sail cover goes on, it will actually cover that and protect it from some UV damage, and it'll be hanging to dry so it doesn't sit wet and mold or mildew. Okay, my main sheet is coiled. I'm going to stow the tiller. This is ship shape for us. I'm going to ease off my backstay control lines, and we'll take them and cross over the top from each side over the tiller and then put some pressure back on, like so. Tight enough so that that holds that tiller in place. We definitely don't want to leave this free to swing back and forth overnight or when the boat's not being used. If you do happen to see a tiller cover on board, it looks like a blue sleeve or a canvas sleeve. Slip that over the tiller first and then lash it down like this. One of our closing steps of putting the boat away is we don't want to forget to put the motor back up. So I'll put my kill key back on. It was off because I turned the motor off, turned the throttle all the way down, closed the vent. One of the things that's easily forgotten is you have to remember this. Turn the fuel off. I'm going to put some pressure down on the motor head so I can release, lift, and that's that. We're almost done. We're just going to get the sail cover on. So we'll make sure that it is right side up. It's important to remember that you want the person standing at the mast to secure all of their snaps. I just noticed we're upside down. There we go. I'll wait for him to get his snaps taken care of before I pull the rest of the material back. Here's where I'll use a handy square knot. I'll come around the halyard, which is acting as a topping lift for the boom. Right over left, cinch, left over right, nice square knot. I'm going to do my last snap back behind the main sheet, block, and then I'm going to snap. That gives it a little bit of extra sun protection. And then I'll just walk along the boom and fasten the rest of these. This is your chance to do a once over and take notes. Did you find anything broken? Was anything missing? Is there anything that you would change? Do you have any notes for me or any of our staff members? Jot that down or just shoot me a text right while you're thinking about it so that we can get down here and do things like putting gas back in the motor, taping up the ring dings at the turnbuckles, excuse me, replacing lines that are frayed, putting telltales back on the shrouds. Is there any fiberglass damage worth mentioning? Things like that. That's your chance to let us know. Thanks very much for watching. We really want you to have fun out in the water, and part of having fun is being safe and then being confident and understanding how to operate the boat. The more experience you have, the more practice, the more fun you're gonna have. Our whole mission at Park City Sailing is to provide this way of life, this sport, this activity to the community, and with your help, we can continue to do that. So thanks for leaving the boats just as you found them and treating them as if they were your own, and have fun. I look forward to seeing you on the water. Nailed it!